99.3 WBTV.org. And now from the Media Factory in Burlington, Vermont, this is Folk Talk. Hi, this is Rik Palieri and
Jason Baker.
Jason Baker. And the reason that he had to come in on the side here is we have a wonderful special guest here in the studio today on Folk Talk. And Zoe Mulford is here with us. She's going to be talking... Mulford, excuse me. Mulford, I got to get that right. A slip of the tongue here, Rik. Mulford. So we have Zoe here. And she's going to be talking about her music and some of the things that she's involved in with her brand new book. And it's going to be pretty exciting. So we are here at the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP, Burlington, streaming online at 993WBTV.org. And we are also on the folkmusicnotebook.com. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Zoe, here you are in Vermont, and what are your impressions as you're driving around?
Oh, it is gorgeous out there today. I had a beautiful long drive up from Manchester, Vermont today on the country roads mostly, and the leaves just starting to turn, and I couldn't have asked for a nicer day to be driving through Vermont.
And Zoe is up here because of a really special project that we're going to talk about, and it's the first time she's out here doing a book tour.
Yeah. I have become the author of a book, which is just out this week. The book is called The President Sang Amazing Grace, which is a song that I wrote. So I had no idea I was writing a book. I thought I was writing a song, and I did not know that the song was going to have legs past the weekend when I wrote it.
But this song...
But it kind of did.
This song cast a big shadow. I mean, I think that... I remember the first time that I saw it in the video. Mm-hmm. You know, the video, it looks like it's similar in a way to the book. Is that correct? I haven't seen the book yet.
The book is basically the book is made from the video. Mm-hmm. So do you want to hear the whole progression? This is a story that just goes on and on and on and on.
Well, let's tease them a little bit.
Okay.
Just a tiny bit. I know you're excited, but Zoe, let's turn back the clock a little bit.
Okay.
And I remember you. I think the first time we met might have been at one of the international folk alliances years ago.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. And did you have a recording with Charlie Pilzer at one time?
I am still on the Azalea City Recordings label, which Charlie Pilzer founded.
Yes.
And I know that you had a recording released on that label as well a long time ago.
And that's where we met.
And so I knew your name because working for the label, I was the graphic artist that put together the catalog back when we were publishing a catalog.
Yeah.
So when I met you at Folk Alliance, I looked at your name tag and said, "Oh, hey, we have a connection."
And I think that because the history goes back a while, I want the listeners to get a sense of, how did this whole thing start as far as music in your life?
Oh, good heavens. I started writing songs when I was tall enough to reach the piano keys. I grew up in a household where people sang for fun. My mother sang to me when I was little to help me fall asleep. If we were driving in the car, and we drove a lot in the car, we would sing rounds. So there's this whole family history of singing. So it's just something that I've always loved to do, and I've always made up songs. Basically, I started making songs when everybody starts making songs, which is when I was a little child, and just nobody stopped me, so I'm still doing it.
Well, and so you play guitar and you play banjo. So guitar is a pretty typical instrument. Mm-hmm. But how did the banjo come into your life?
Well, the banjo is actually the third instrument. The guitar is the second instrument. The first instrument was the piano. Mm-hmm. But when I moved out on my own, I didn't have a piano, and I missed it. And my living space did not really allow for a piano. So I went into the guitar shop across the street from where I was working on my lunch break, and I said, "Do you have somebody here who teaches?" And they sent me to Tim Bird Warman, who was an old-time flat picker. And he started teaching me fiddle tunes and teaching me, by ear. Every lesson was with a tape recorder, which is how I learned best. And so he would teach me to pick the tune, and he would teach me the chords, and then we would swap back and forth in the lesson. And as soon as I was able to finger 3 chords without choking, he sent me out to the picking circles. And I would sit on the edge of the circle and play my 3 chords, and the guys in the middle would carry the tune and show off and be wonderful, and that is how I learned to play the guitar. And that is how I fell in love with clawhammer banjo.
From the fiddle tunes.
From the fiddle tunes.
Now, where exactly did you grow up?
I grew up in a little Quaker town called Swarthmore outside of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And then where I was living when I started playing guitar was Durham, North Carolina. So that's really where I became a musician within the community of musicians, was in North Carolina.
Well, there's a big history there.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to learn how to play. And did you start with clawhammer banjo?
I started with clawhammer banjo, and that's still what I do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's much more popular than ever. When I started playing band, we called it clawhammer, but we were still calling it frailing, back then. And now Ken Perlman and so many wonderful banjo players have really turned it into something much more melodic than it was back in the early days. And I mean, there was always some people like Wade Ward and Fred Cockerham that played, really beautiful. That old style clawhammer, but a lot of people like Grandpa Jones and String Bean and stuff like that, they were all kind of, rapping it, banging it kind of thing. And the clawhammer has a very particular and beautiful sound. And I don't know if you do want to play a little.
Oh, I'd love to. Let me start out with this one. And it's just about the right time of year to play this one. So as I was coming up the highway, I saw a lot of vineyards. And when I was walking around the parking lot, stretching my legs before the show, I saw that you have wild grapes growing all along the edge of the parking lot. So when I was growing up, my parents and I would drive to Bridgeton, New Jersey, which is the southern part of New Jersey, where the farms are. And that's where my grandparents lived. And we would go out in the woods and pick wild grapes. And the woods were so overgrown that the best way to get there was in a boat. So those wonderful purple wild grapes, we called them fox grapes. We're going down to the Garden State, where the sand is the color of the license plates. Down to my grandparents' house on the lake. It's the end of the summer, so you know what to take. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Load up the buckets and the dishpans too, and pile them all in the old canoe. Paddle to the place where the creek flows down. The nettles and the catbirds growing all around. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. You can pick 'em from the bank, you can pick 'em from the boat. You can drop 'em in the water and away they'll float. Wild as a muskrat, round as a ball. They taste of the summer as it turns into fall. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. And if we find just a few good vines, we'll be home with our harvest by supper time. Muddy and wet and scratched and stung and sore in the arms and purple in the tongue. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Smush up the grapes in a clean old sheet. The kitchen smells all wild and sweet. Boil up the juice and skim off the scum, and we'll have jelly when the winter comes. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Toil and sweat and countless hours, and it all boils down into 6 little jars. Still we say it was worth it all, for the taste of the summer as it turns into fall. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. So load up the buckets and don't delay. The grapes are gone by Labor Day. If you go when the season's done, you can look all you like and you won't find a one. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Bring along a bucket, 'cause we're all gonna go up on the creek where the fox grapes grow. Up on the creek where the fox grapes grow.
You know, that's a really beautiful kind of feeling about southern New Jersey. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey and spent a lot of time down in Waretown, you know, way down in the Pine Barrens. And there's a whole culture of Pineys down there who've been playing music at Albert's Cabin. Did you ever get to go there?
I've never been to Albert's Cabin.
Yeah.
I've met a few of the local musicians. My ancestors in southern New Jersey were oystermen, and one of there's a place where one of the oyster warehouses has been turned into a museum. This is in Bivalve, New Jersey, and one of my local relatives invited me down there to play at the Oyster Museum in Bivalve. So I got to visit that part of the world and connect with some of the people who make and listen to music there.
It's a different place than when you think of New Jersey. It's going down into the southern part, especially in the Pine Barrens. And so, Zoe, when did you write that song?
I wrote that song, let's see, I was living in, it was after I left North Carolina. I was living outside of Washington, D.C., and when I wrote it, I was just beginning to play the banjo, so it's the first track on my very first studio album, and the banjo is on there. There's some highly inexpert banjo in the background, but the arrangement that I just played on the banjo came along later because it as I learned my way around the banjo, it seemed to be the right instrument for that song.
Well, it sounds great. It sounds great. So let's talk a little bit about that early songwriting. So you were playing the piano, you were playing the guitar, you're starting to play banjo, but you probably were songwriting even before you started playing the banjo, right?
Yeah.
So when did that happen?
Well, the key part of that was aside from my parents making music, I had a wonderful elementary music teacher. Her name was Betty Jo Wagner, and my school was fairly small, and every child in that school probably from kindergarten through the 6th grade had music class with Mrs. Wagner once a week. And so there was this wonderful continuity to the program. And you would, everybody in the school was participating in the concerts. And when you were little, you could look up and say, in 3rd grade, I get to sing in the chorus. And in 4th grade, I get to play the recorder. And in 5th grade, I get to play the ukulele. And in 6th grade, if I really work at it, I can join the bell choir. So there was this, she gave you space to get very serious about music if you wanted to. But she also made space for everybody to connect with music in whatever way they wanted to. I mean, we danced in that class, we played music games, we drew pictures. So she was really trying to prepare every child in the school to make music part of their lives. And it was a tremendous gift. And she also believed that children could be composers. Her daughter is a composer named Melinda Wagner, who won a Pulitzer Prize in composition. So I don't know whether Betty Jo taught Melinda or Melinda taught Betty Jo, but children in that class could be composers, and she told me I was one.
I'm sure that helps.
Yeah.
To get that confidence. I mean, the thing that's interesting also is that you said that there was music already in your family.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
My mother was a classically trained orchestral bass player. And she also played the piano and later the concertina for her own enjoyment. When I was growing up, my parents had friends who would come over and sing madrigals for fun. And when I got old enough to kind of read music, I got to participate in that too. So there was both formal and informal music going on. We were very involved at the local community theater, and there was a children's program at the local community theater, and I wrote some songs for musicals in the children's program. So yeah, I came to songwriting from a varied background, but I never, but by the time I was in my early 20s, I'd kind of thought of it as something I couldn't do, because there was that point leaving high school where the people advising you want to put you on a professional track. And they looked at my sight reading skills and said, you cannot go to conservatory, therefore you cannot do this. You're smart, go do something else. So I went to Harvard and studied Chinese, as you do. And it wasn't until after college, living in North Carolina and just missing having music in my life, that I met that community of folk musicians who were playing by ear, who were part of the oral tradition, and who were making music in a way that I understood and could participate in. And so the old-time musicians introduced me to the songwriters, and the songwriters introduced me to the Swannanoa Gathering at Warren Wilson College in Asheville. And that sort of introduced me to the idea of, okay, yeah, I can do this fairly seriously. I can take my instruments out to public places and make music and maybe even get paid for it. So I kind of eased into it from there. But it's been a very, very long and meandering journey.
Well, why don't you play us another song, Zoe?
Okay.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the more recent things that you've been doing. So it's great to have people watching over here on our brand new YouTube Folk Talk channel with Zoe Mulford. And we are going to have Zoe play another song. She played one on the banjo and now one on the guitar.
It's a song about songs and the people who sing them. Never a drifter. Now, let's try that again. Never a drifter, a drinker, a gambler, boxcar rider, rogue or rambler. He never saw Lake Pontchartrain or crossed the Rio Grande. He lived in one town all his life, and he raised his kids and he loved his wife. But he could take you anywhere with a guitar in his hands. And all of the songs were road songs. He knew we're just passing through. And they were love songs. They all were love songs. The way he'd sing them for you. His voice was deep and road grit rough, and his hands were big and scarred and tough, and exquisitely gentle with babies and guitars. The big wool jacket, black and red, he wore in his workshop out in the shed, always smelled of wood smoke and snow and winter stars. And all of the songs were road songs. He knew we're just passing through. And they were love songs. They all were love songs. The way he'd sing them for you. Now half your weary life's been spent in places that he never went. You've been to California, you've been to New Orleans, but all you ever see is more of the same concrete and big box stores. You never find the magic of the places that he sang into your dreams. And all of the songs were road songs. He knew we're just passing through. And they were love songs. They all were love songs. The way he'd sing them for you. They were love songs. Oh, sing me love songs, the way he sang them for you.
on the road, doesn't it? So, Zoe, when did you know that this was your path? That, I mean, not just playing music, because there's a big difference between playing music and making a life as a professional musician. When did you know?
In addition to meeting the old-time musicians in North Carolina, I also met the Unitarian Universalists. And I was invited to sing for a service. And it was the first time I'd been, I was not raised in a church. The theater was our church. That was what we did on Sunday mornings. But the UUs were the first time I'd been to a service that didn't make me feel like I really ought to be someplace else. And I got up and I sang my song to these people who were in church and listening in that very intense and open way that you listen in church. And I looked around at the way the room changed in the course of the song. And I thought, this is magic. This is more than just me having a good time. This is like a chemical reaction going on. The world is changing because I'm here singing this song to these people right now, and I want more of this. And then when we were in North Carolina, my husband was in graduate school, and for part of that time, I was the paycheck. And then he got a job at the University of Maryland, and we moved, and I did not have a job lined up. And my husband said, well, don't worry, just take a month off and make music. And so a month later, I didn't have a job, and 6 months later, I didn't have a job, and a year later, I was playing out pretty seriously, and that's kind of where it started. So I owe a big pile of gratitude to my husband, who has been so unfailingly supportive of what I'm doing since I started doing it, and every now and then we have one of those conversations. You know, if I'm having a bad day, he'll listen to me saying, oh, this is too hard, I should get a job. And he says, you have a job.
Well, you know, I think that's one of the things about a lot of us is if we didn't have that kind of support, there's no way we could do this. No. There was no way. I can remember Utah Phillips talking about how important it was to have that balance. And you know, a lot of the old mentors, one of the things that they kept on saying is, I wish I would have spent more time at home. You know, while it was great to be out on the road, and it is, there is a real importance to have a balance, to know that you have something to go back to. And there's like, for me, I would not be able to do what I do without the support of Mariana. I mean, there's just no way. But then she gets back at me and makes me, harvest the honey. Oh, yes. So what we're going to do is Jason, you want to say the station identification here, okay?
All right. Thanks, folks. From the Media Factory in South Burlington, in Burlington, in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP Burlington, and we're streaming online at 993wbtv.org. And we are also streaming live on YouTube on our Folk Talk YouTube channel.
All right. And we are having a wonderful conversation and with Zoe Mulford. And I'm getting that right now, right? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I had to correct one of my favorite folk DJs on the air when he introduced me as Zoe Mulford. And I said, no, it's Mulford with an L. Mumford is those other guys.
Well, Zoe, we are just really excited to have you here And I wanted to give people a little bit of that early background before we talked about this part of your life, because this is really exciting. And I want you to have that full, we have about a half an hour that we can explore to tell this full story behind this marvelous song that you wrote. And I really want to hear it from the beginning. So let our listeners really hear how this wonderful song about the President Sang Amazing Grace came to life.
Okay. So it starts with one unlikely circumstance, which is in 2015, I watched television on one particular day. 2015 was a hard year. There was just this stream of bad news and awful stories, particularly about police killings of unarmed black civilians. And then there was the horrible news from Charleston, South Carolina. And I heard that on the radio, and I just thought, oh, this is just one more thing. But then I happened to be visiting my Aunt Joanna. I haven't owned a television since 1986. I don't particularly like television, and I really don't like television news, so I almost never watch it. But my Aunt Joanna was devoted to television news, and so I happened to be watching with her when they were broadcasting the memorial for the people who were murdered at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston. And so I saw on television, like so many other people saw on television, President Obama giving the eulogy for State Senator Clementa Pinckney and singing Amazing Grace. And I mean, first of all, I have tremendous respect for any public figure who sings a cappella on mic. And it was really meaningful that he sang in that place to that room full of people. And for me, it was sort of, here he was, and even with the power of the U.S. presidency, there was nothing he could do to fix this. There was no way he could fix what had been broken, but he could be there with those people. And by being there, he brought the rest of the nation, he brought the rest of us to sit with those people at their time of trouble. So I was very moved by that. I didn't actually write the song until a year later. The week of the 2016 election was also the week of the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance Conference. So the election was on Tuesday, and on Thursday, about 800 folkies collected in a hotel in Stamford, Connecticut, and we were all having our feelings about what was to come. And I knew that I was going to write something over the course of the weekend because I had to write something or explode. But I didn't know what it was going to be. And then as I drove to Stamford, Connecticut, I was listening to a podcast by one of my other favorite folk DJs, a guy named Mike Harding in England. And his podcast that I was listening to was about heroes and villains in traditional music. So I was hearing all these old historic ballads about people who did things in history, and I was reflecting on just the elegance with which these stories were told. And a lot of them are very uninflected, particularly when they're talking about horrible, horrible things that happened. It's just, this happened, and then this happened, and then this other thing happened. And they just tell the story. So I got to the conference. I was walking through the revolving glass doors of the hotel, and I found this line, "The President sang Amazing Grace." And I thought, that's the story I'm going to tell. And I spent the rest of the weekend trying to take out absolutely everything that didn't need to be there and just tell the story in that very simple and elegant way that the old ballads tell stories from history. So by Sunday morning, I had the whole thing, and I sang it at the closing song circle. And there were about 20 people in a circle in the hotel lobby, and at the end of it, they all stood up and sang Amazing Grace with me. And I happened to be working on an album that was supposed to be done and going to mastering that week, and I delayed the production schedule so that I could get that song on it. I had to be talked into putting the song on, because at first I was thinking, oh, the album's supposed to be done. I can't get that on there. So I and my engineer, Brian Bedford, and a second lot of engineers at Turtle Studios in Philadelphia all worked really hard at the last minute to get that song on the album. So,
well, I think at this point, let's hear you
should
play
I sing
it,
that song?
and then we'll talk about the next series of events.
So this is the way it was written. It was written to be sung a cappella. And this is about what it sounded like. This is going to sound much better than it sounded that first Sunday morning, because that was the end of the conference and my voice was shot. But here's what it sounds like a cappella. A young man came to a house of prayer. They did not ask what brought him there. He was not friend, he was not kin, but they opened the door and let him in. And for an hour the stranger stayed. He sat with them and he seemed to pray. But then the young man drew a gun and killed 9 people, old and young. In Charleston in the month of June, the mourners gathered in a room. The president came to speak some words, and the cameras rolled and the nation heard. But no words could say what must be said for all the living and the dead. So on that day and in that place, the president sang Amazing Grace. The president sang Amazing Grace. We argued where to lay the blame, on one man's hate or our nation's shame, some sickness of the mind or soul, and how the wounds might be made whole. But no words could say what must be said for all the living and the dead. So on that day and in that place, the president sang Amazing Grace. My president sang Amazing Grace.
Wow. It's a when you hear the song, it just hits you in the heart. And you said what needed to be said. And I think as you reflected, that you took out everything that didn't need to be there to tell that story. But to continue with your story, what happened next?
So what happened next is Carrie Estrin sent the album out to radio stations, to folk radio stations all across the country, and a lot of people heard it. And one of those people was Joan Baez, who happened to be driving in her car in her hometown and turned on her local folk radio show and happened to hear that song. And she says that she pulled over to the side of the road and cried. And then she recorded it. And I got an email from her manager with the subject line Joan Baez, and you know, here's this email from an unfamiliar address, and I think, oh, this has got to be spam. But it was not. So I read the email, and I took half an hour, and I was trying to say, oh, well, yes, this is the sort of thing that happens when you are a professional musician, as I am, but I was squealing and dancing on the ceiling. So anyway, Joan Baez recorded it on her album that came out in 2018, which was called Whistle Down the Wind. And she took it on tour and sang it all over Europe and all over the United States. And I think every interview she did with press, they talked about that song. They played it on All Things Considered, and they talked about the song on All Things Considered. And I wasn't listening at the time, but I got this post on Facebook from one of my elementary school classmates who said, "Some woman just sang your song on the radio." So that has been absolutely amazing. One of the things that accompanied Joan Baez's album was they commissioned a filmmaker at Tisch named Rik Litvin to make videos for all the tracks on the album. And the first one that was released was The President Sang Amazing Grace. And he had worked with an animator named Jeff Schur, who also works at Tisch. And they made this beautiful animated video to accompany the song. It's these very loose paintings, some in watercolor and some in pastel. And the first time I saw it, I had this very strange experience, as if I was hearing my song, which I wrote, the way somebody else who wasn't me would hear it. Because I think what Jeff did with those illustrations was he was trying to do visually the same thing I was trying to do with the lyric. And he was able to bring in things visually, including the faces of all those 9 people, that I think make the video just very affecting. So the video was featured on the website of The Atlantic, and a lot of people saw it. And every time there is another incidence of gun violence in the news, unfortunately, the video makes the rounds again, because people need something to create the space to be with their feelings when these awful things happen. And I think that's what the song and the video do for people. I hope that's what they do.
Now, did you get a chance to meet Joan Baez since then?
Yes. I have been to more than one of her tour dates. But the coolest thing was she was invited to sing the song at a rally in South Carolina. in the heart of Charleston, commemorating the 3rd anniversary of the attack at Emmanuel AME Church. And I got an email from her saying she was doing this and was I going to be there? And I said yes, and bought a ticket to Charleston. And that was just it was such a mind-blowing experience. It was, it was a pilgrimage for me, and I tried to go with an open heart. At that rally, every one of the people who died had family members who stood up and spoke for them, and I got to learn more about who they were as people and the role that they played in their community in Charleston. I mean, these were people who were at the heart of their community and made things happen. And it was a real privilege to meet their families and to visit the church. And as Joan Baez and I and the mayor of Charleston went to visit the church, and as we walked in the front doors, Joan held my hand. And she sang "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" in that church. So yeah, it has been a very, very interesting journey, and it is not over yet.
No, because there's something brand new.
The brand new thing is,
it's like a child. You produced a child that keeps growing and surprising you.
Yeah, and things. I put a thing into the world, and things keep on happening as a consequence of that. A book publisher in California saw the video and thought, this should be a book for children, and contacted Rick Litvin and Jeff Schur, who made the video, and said, we want to make this into a book. And all the people who needed to say yes said yes, and the book came out this week, and it's beautiful.
Can you hold it up?
I can hold it up.
Right over there.
So
there's the camera, and this is Zoe Mulford's brand new book.
Yeah, and so I am now.
That must be humbling when you.
It is,
because it's sort of like you did this out of your heart.
Yeah.
The whole thing was you felt there was a need for this song. You did not think of anything beyond that. And now you can see that the need was there and met as more people are using this song. And Zoe, that's what folk music really is. A lot of people, they always think about what is folk music, and we can have all kinds of discussions, but it really is things that reflect the times and needs of the community.
Yeah. This is the music people make because they need it within their own communities. And that's always what I've tried to do. I mean, I started out trying to make the music that I needed to make. And I still make the music that I need to make. But the ones I keep on singing are the ones that when I sing them, I find out that they need to be heard. And people, it's such a privilege when I find that somebody has taken a song that I've written and invited it into their lives and made it part of their internal furniture. That's the absolute best thing. And when people want to learn songs I wrote and sing songs I wrote, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I want to keep doing it. Well,
Zoe, there is a way for people to do just that, because you do have a website, right?
I do have a website. I have a whole bunch of tour dates, both book signing events in bookstores and concerts where I will be singing. I will be traveling to parts of the country that I've never been to before on this particular trip, and I'm still in the process of adding dates. So there will be, if you've been to my website recently, go back again in a little while because it will have changed.
And there is a website for the book also?
There, the publisher of the book is Cameron and Company, and there's information there about where you can find the book and how you can order it if you wish to.
Yes. So, I think that if you go to her website, you can find out more information. That's what we always like to do, is educate our listeners here at the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP Burlington, streaming online at 993wbtv.org. Also will be broadcast as an encore performance on the folkmusicnotebook.com, Ron Olesko's 24/7 fantastic radio show, which he has played this song many times. So we are here with Zoe Mulford, and she has been delighting us with her stories, and we are going to get her to do another song because Jason is chomping at the bit over here.
Okay.
It's his birthday, and we have to have Zoe play a song. What are you going to play, Zoe?
Oh, I know what I'm going to play. This is a song that I like doing for birthdays and anniversaries and New Year's celebrations and anytime we're marking the passage of time. I don't know if this happens for you, Jason, but I'm a person who needs a reset button. I get hung up on things that didn't go as well as I hoped they would.
That would never happen to me. Well, maybe.
So every now and then I feel like I just need to I need to start a fresh page. And the new year is a wonderful time to do that. Let's tune that up a little bit more.
It's a banjo, folks.
It is a banjo.
And this is live music right here on Folk Talk. And that's what we like. We like to keep it real. And tuning a banjo is
about as real as it gets. Build up the bonfires, now the season's turn. Welcome in another year and let the old one burn. Build up the bonfires, light the candles bright. How the hungry spirits will be coming by tonight. Light the bonfires, another year has flown. Gather friends around you, don't spend the night alone. Sweep out the courtyard to greet the coming year. Lay a handsome table, your visitors are here. Build up the bonfires, now the season's turn. Welcome in another year and let the old one burn. Build up the bonfires, light the candles bright. All the hungry spirits will be coming by tonight. Here come your sorrows, all your old regrets, every broken promise and every unpaid debt. Perched on your shoulders, yearning toward the flame, pour them a glass of whiskey and greet them all by name. Build up the bonfires, now the season's turn. Welcome in another year and let the old one burn. Build up the bonfires, light the candles bright. All the hungry spirits will be coming by tonight. Now make them welcome, offer them release, offer them atonement, and pray they may find peace. Give them your blessing, but do not let them stay. Beat on the cans and the pots and pans and send them on their way. Build up the bonfires, now the seasons turn. Welcome in another year and let the old one burn. Build up the bonfires, light the candles bright. All the hungry spirits will be coming by tonight.
Zoe Mulford singing a wonderful song about the changing of the seasons and the years passing by. And you know, it makes me think of how the time does fly here on Folk Talk. Can you believe it that we've almost talked a full hour with Zoe about all the things that she's doing? And I don't know if do we have enough time for her to squeeze in another short song?
If she wants to, really quick.
It's up to you, Zoe. And
Okay.
we'll have Zoe do another song. You can play us out if you like. This is Rik Palieri here and Jason Baker. We are from the Media Factory in the south end of Burlington, Vermont. This is 99.3 FM, WBTV-LP Burlington, streaming online at 993wbtv.org.
And streaming online at folkmusicnotebook.com, Sunday nights typically at 8 p.m. Eastern. And let's hear Zoe Mulford. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Zoe, for being here and being the very first guest on our brand new Folk Talk YouTube channel.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for setting this up on short notice, and thank you for making it really easy to talk with you for an hour. It was fun. There's one piece of wisdom that sticks in my head. I heard it someplace, or it's something I read about someone or other whose grandmother said that life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to play solitaire. Get off your duff, it's time to begin. There's good deeds to do and there's sins to be sinned, and there's not enough time to fit it all in. Life is too short to fold underwear. Well, life is too short to worry and fret. There's trouble enough without getting upset about all of the problems you haven't got yet. And life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to play solitaire. Get off your duff, it's time to begin. There's good deeds to do and there's sins to be sinned, and there's not enough time to fit it all in. Life is too short to fold underwear. I have more verses if you need them. Well, life is too short to spend at the wheel, moving 10 miles an hour in your automobile, while your temper gets frayed and your muscles congeal. And life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to fold underwear. Life is too short to play solitaire. Get off your duff, it's time to begin. There's good deeds to do and there's sins to be sinned, and there's not enough time to fit it all in. Life is too short to fold underwear.
Zoe Mulford, great to have you here on Folk Talk. We'll see you again next week for another rousing edition of Folk Talk.
WBTV-LP Burlington.
Burlington.
Welcome to episode 290 of Troubadours and Rock on Tours with yours truly, EW.